Good morning, dear students. In this video, we shall learn about the methods of measuring secular trend. There are various methods used for determining the trend, but we shall learn only the four methods. The first method is graphical method, second one semi-averages method, third one moving averages method, and fourth one least squares method. First one graphical method, second one semi-averages method, third one moving averages method, fourth one least squares method. We shall learn this method in brief. We shall move on to the first one, that is graphical method, which is also known as freehand method. In this method, this is one of the simplest method of studying the trend. In this method, original data will be plotted on the graph. Whatever the original data we have received, we are going to plot it on the graph. Here, the time is shown on the horizontal axis and the values of the variable is shown on the vertical axis. Here, the time is shown on the horizontal axis and the values of the variable is shown on the vertical axis. After that, draw a smooth line or curve carefully which will show the direction of the trend. Drawing a smooth line or a curve carefully will show you the direction of the trend. The straight line or the curve will be the best to fit the data. The straight line or the curve will be the best to fit the data. The line will be drawn according to the personal judgment. Now, when we draw the trend line, we need to follow some of the points. When we draw the trend line, we must note some of the points. That is, first one, the curve should be smooth. Second one, approximately there must be equal number of points above and below the curve. Approximately there must be equal number of points. If suppose there are 2 points above the line, then there must be 2 points below the line also. Next, the total deviations of the curve above the trend line must be same as the total deviations below the line. Next, merits. It is the simplest method. Second one, it is flexible and adaptable. It is very simplest method because whatever the data is been given, we are going to directly plot it over the graph and then we need to observe. So it is one of the simplest. It is flexible and adaptable. Next, demerits. It is highly affected by the personal bias. That is, this method is subjective since different persons may draw different trend lines for the same data depending upon their individual judgment. It is highly affected by the personal bias. Second one, it is not drawn by experienced person. If it is not drawn by the experienced person, then it is dangerous to use the forecasting purposes. Then it is dangerous to use it for the forecasting purposes. Third one, it does not help us to measure the trend. It does not help us to measure the trend. Fourth one, no rigid mathematical formula is laid down for drawing the trend line. No rigid mathematical formula is laid down for drawing the trend line. Next, we shall learn some of the problems. First example, fit a trend line to the following data by graphic method. So, the data has been given, we need to directly plot it over the graph. Data is given here with respect to the profits it is given. So here we need to take in the horizontal axis and profits we need to take it on the vertical axis. So time will represent here for the years. So time should be taken in the horizontal axis. See the solution also. Years it is mentioned on the horizontal axis 2003, 2004, 2005 and profits are measured in terms of vertical axis. In vertical axis, plot the graph and join the lines. Plot the graph and join the points. So first draw the histogram. You see the representation given. You can see the representation given. Histogram, it is been represented by straight line, in between the middle a dark dot. then trend line, it is been the dotted line. So trend line, it is been calculated. See, you need to, when you draw the trend line, you need to observe the 3 points. First one, that is the curve should be smooth. First plot the points, then draw the curve or the straight line. You join the points, then draw the trend line. When you draw the trend line, you need to observe that approximately equal number of points should be above the curve and below the line. Above the line and below the line. You see here, 2 points are there, that is 2 points above the line, 2 points below the line. By seeing those, you need to draw the trend line. Next, moving on to the second example. Fit a trend line to the following data by graphic method. So years are given, production in tons, 10 tons are given. So years, you need to plot it on the horizontal axis and production in tons on a vertical axis. Then plot the points in the graph, then join all the points. Draw the histogram. After drawing the histogram, you need to draw the trend line. When you draw the trend line, see that the curve should be smooth. You can observe that curve is smooth. Now second one is, you should have equal number of points above and below the curve. You should have above and below the curve. See above the curve, 1, 2, 3 and 4 points are there, and below the curve you can find the 4 points. So you can draw the trend line after that. Next, moving on to the second method of measuring secular trend, that is semi-averages. In this method, the original data is being divided into 2 equal parts and averages are calculated for both the parts. In this method, original data is divided into 2 equal parts and averages are calculated for both the parts. These averages are called semi-averages. These averages are called as semi-averages. The two semi-average values are written against the center of the 2 time spans. Where to write the values? Those values are written against the centers of the 2 time spans. On a graph sheet, the 2 trend values are plotted with suitable scale and join the straight line which indicates the direction of the trend line. So whenever you draw a semi-average, when you apply the semi-average method and when you draw the graphical representation of it, over a graph sheet, the 2 trend values are plotted with suitable scale and joined it by the straight line which indicates the direction of the trend. Next is merits. What are the merits of the semi-averages method? Merits, first one, it is simple to understand than the moving average and least squares method. These 2 methods you will be learning in further videos. Second one, it is objective method, that is everyone who applies this method will get same trend. Whoever applies the method, he will get the same trend. Next, what are the demerits of it? It is affected by the limitation of arithmetic mean. It is been affected by the limitation of arithmetic mean. Exact values you are unable to predict. This method is not enough for forecasting the future trend. This method is not enough to forecasting the future trend. We can draw a straight line by joining the 2 points of averages. By extending the line, we can predict the future trend. In further problems, we observe. Next, moving on to the example problems. Example 3. Draw a trend line by the method of semi-averages. Year and sales in thousands it has been given. Now we shall move on to the solution. The average of the first 3 years you have to calculate. You have to calculate the averages of the first 3 years. First group them. because total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 datas are there. So first you calculate the average of first 3, that is 110, 105 and 115. Next group is 110, 120 and 130. So that is the second group. You make those as the two groups. You can see it has been solved in the tabular column. So 110 plus 105 plus 115, it will give you 330 divided by 3. So average you have to divide it by 3, which will give you 110. Next, 2008, 2009 and 2010 years, you need to calculate the sales. So it is 110 plus 120 plus 130, which will give you 360 divided by 3, which will give you 120. So next, plotting the graph. You see the graph. First, years you need to take in terms of horizontal axis, and sales in thousands units you need to take it on the vertical axis. Plot the points of the sales, then take the trend values. Trend values you plot and draw the trend line. You can see the trend line, it is been represented as the dotted line, and histogram is represented as a straight line in between the dark dot. Next, example 4, draw a trend line by the method of semi-averages method. You see the data 2002 up to 2010 data is being given, and you can see there are 9 years are given. So 9 years you can't divide them into equal parts. 4.5 you can't divide, so you make them into groups as first 4, in between you leave 1 and next 4. So you see the solution, it is divided as first 4 values years are divided, 2006 is been left out, and rest 4 is been added. So the averages of first 4 and last 4 is been taken. You see the solution. Add 412 plus 438, 444 plus 454 will give you 1748 divided by 4, which will be equal to 437. Next, the middle will be 470, and next add 480 plus 490 plus 500 plus 530 will give you 2000 divided by 4 will give you 500. Next is plotting of the graph. You see the graph. In this graph you need to plot years in horizontal axis and sales in 1000 units on the vertical axis. Then draw the histogram. After that you draw the trend line. Next we'll move on to the moving averages method. In this method, depending on the various specified period, the average value for a number of periods is taken into account and placing it at center of the time span. That is, period of moving average is calculated for successive overlapping groups of a time series data. The method of moving averages is also based on the arithmetic mean method. In this method, depending on the specified period, the average value for a number of periods is taken into account and placing it at the center of the time span, that is, period of moving average. It is calculated for successive overlapping groups of time series data. The data obtained in terms of averages are moving averages, or those are also called as the trend values. The period of moving averages will be for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, or it will be monthly. Next, what are the merits of this method? It is simple and easy to understand. It is more flexible than other methods. It is not only used for the measurement of trend, but also for the measurement of seasonal, cyclical and irregular variations. This method can be applied for seasonal, cyclical and irregular variations. Next, demerits. The method does not provide the trend values at the beginning and at the end of the time series. Since the method does not establish mathematical relationship, it cannot be used for forecasting. Next, we shall see the example problems. Calculate 3 yearly moving averages for the following data. So 3 yearly, you see that 3 yearly moving averages for the following data you need to calculate. So the data has been given, years and sales in thousands is given. So to find the moving averages, initially the moving totals are obtained, then each of these are divided by 3. These moving averages are the trend values. First you have to make the 3 yearly moving totals. Then you have to take the average of that. So first one, years. See the tabulation how it is done. Years. Next is sales. After that 3 yearly moving total. Now first we shall see how to calculate 3 yearly moving totals in thousands. 3 yearly it is mentioned. So start from 86, 63 and 45. So first 3 you add. So 86, 63 and 45 will give you 194. So where to write this 194? You have to write it in the middle of these 3 data. So 86, 63 and 45, the middle will be 63. So in front of 63 you need to write the total of it. Next, you are not grouping this, you are going to calculate the successive overlapping values. So the 86 value you have to exclude for the second calculation. Next is 63 plus 45 plus 58 will give you 166. Go on adding likewise, and at the last one will be remaining. So next you have to calculate the average of these 3 years moving. So 3 yearly moving averages you need to calculate. You divide these 194 divided by 3, you will get the average values. Next, plotting the graph and conclusion. Plot the graph in horizontal axis time and vertical axis sales in 1000 tons. So the conclusion you can give is the given data shows oscillatory trend. Next, example 6. Find 5 yearly moving averages for the following time series. Year and value they have given. So you need to calculate 5 yearly moving averages. So divide them. First you calculate 5 yearly moving totals. So 5 yearly moving totals, 10 plus 15 plus 18 plus 21 plus 25, total it will be 89. So where to write 89? In between of these 5 values. In between of these 5 values it will be 18. So in front of 18 you have to write 89. See, likewise you go on calculating the consecutive overlapping values. You will get 109, 127, 149 and 178. Next, calculating the trend values, you divide these values by 5. So the given data shows the upward trend. Next, moving on to the example 7. Compute 4 yearly moving averages for the following data. So here see the solution now. Here the moving averages is an even period moving average, that is 4 yearly. Initially 4 yearly moving totals should be obtained. Then 2 items moving totals of these moving totals should be obtained. Finally these totals are divided by 8. So be careful. For this, first you have to calculate for 4 yearly moving totals, then you have to calculate for 2 yearly moving totals. So first one, to calculate 4 yearly moving totals, that is 75, 60, 55 and 60. So you calculate first 4 yearly, it will give you 250. Where to write this 250? You have to write at the third value. You write it at the third value or at the second value, however it is there. Next, likewise, then you have to calculate second item moving totals of the previous column, that is of the 4 years, that is 250 plus 240, it will give you 490. Same way, go on adding, you will get the values. Next, trend values you calculate dividing by 8. So the conclusion you can see is the given data shows the upward trend. Next, example 8. Estimate the trend values by taking 4 yearly moving averages. So same way you apply the previous method and solve. Thank you.